Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for flipping houses for rookies!
Gee, but I think I should do that part to introduce you, then you do something.
Okay, let's do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, be prepared for the ultimate spectacular, I don't know what, but here it comes, because I never know. You'll find out. Here he is,
Flipping houses for rookies! You forgot that part. Episode number 191. Remarkable. Get that? Remarkable. If you are allergic to losing money in real estate, use options exclusively.
Oh. How do you avoid losing money? Don't give him any.
Don't give him any, right? Fear. Oh.
How do you avoid fear?
Don't
have any.
Don't have any. There you go. That four-letter F word. Fear.
I'm on some very, very fine philosophical advice. I've learned that if you don't want something, just don't do it.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's age, Pete. That's what happens when you're almost 70 years old.
Like, who cares?
Fear. This is the number one reason so many don't dip their big toe in the large pond of real estate profits. When actually converting houses to fast cash all over North America, regardless if you're broke or wealthy, is more about leaping than learning. And by listening to this podcast, you will soon realize having cash now from your deals rather than years from now is the only way to avoid all your fear. You know,
that sounds good.
They say fear is, you know, how do you overcome fear? Activity, which we're going to talk about later.
Yeah.
Nah, I say overcome fear with a big fat check.
Yeah.
Okay? That works better.
Yep.
Risk and losses. Right? Mm-hmm. So I finished a sentence in the middle, so I'm going to read the whole sentence, right? So, anyways, forget it. So today we're going to cover options in extreme detail. Options in extreme detail.
Mm-hmm.
So you know everything you need to know about doing these deals for fast cash and risk-free. The best antidote for fear is action, like I was saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or better, a big fat check. And today, I'm going to help you figure out how easily this could be that you may not even listen to the whole podcast to get started. You may get excited and go off and not finish.
But put it on pause, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get the rest. Yeah, okay.
This one strategy, not known in the mainstream real estate investing world, could put you light years ahead of all other investors and allow you to make offers on leads others are throwing in the trash. I've been doing that for years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
If you want to make some money in real estate, you must put yourself in a position to do so, and this podcast is going to help you figure that out. Da-da-da!
Mm-hmm. Page 1, done. Page 2.
First, I want to make a promise to all my listeners. By the end of this podcast, you're going to be like a caveman with a lighter. That's my favorite saying lately.
I saw that one.
Way ahead of everyone else, not doing what... I'm going to read that again. So I'm going to put you way ahead of everyone else that's not doing what we do. And I'm going to show you how to do it today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So in episode 190, which was the last episode, which was last week, right? In episode 190, it was called Controversial but Extremely Legal Strategies to buy a lot of real estate quickly. I promise the next couple of episodes to go over my deal strategies.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done this like in the beginning of the podcast series.
Yeah.
Instead of just going at it like a mathematical approach with deal structuring, like last week we kind of talked about the philosophy of it.
Right.
Because, you know, for me to make this work, I actually had to like be philosophical about it to make the math work, because why would the math work with one person and not another?
Motive.
Yeah. So I just needed to figure some things out. And maybe it's too deep for some people.
No, Bill, I just thought about something. It's not that unusual to do this. Do you realize how many marketing campaigns do surveys on people just to find out what damn toothpaste to sell?
Right.
I mean, everything has that, or they should.
Right.
You know, you go to a restaurant and then maybe a survey at them. What did you like? How was your serve? People need to know something about who's selling, who's buying, so they can match things up. It's not unusual.
Right.
It's less usual in real estate because it's like going to the store, they think, to buy something. You know, you go to Home Depot, pick up a saw. Mm-hmm. You go to MLS and buy a house, but we're not doing that.
Right.
So it's very much like when a company tries to figure what's going on with the public.
So what makes me different than most is I definitely am exclusive with buying pretty houses.
Yeah.
Right. And when I mean pretty houses, I mean there are houses that are dated and stuff. They're not beautiful. I don't say beautiful houses. What I pretty much mean is that they're houses that we don't have to do. You know, they're livable.
Yeah. They don't need to be a rental. They're not a TV subject of renovation.
So what we're going to do in this podcast is, because last podcast we talked about we're going to cover all 7 strategies, which, by the way, if you're curious about them and want to jump ahead, you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/free stuff. Scroll to the bottom of the page and there's a bunch of videos that actually shows the deal structuring. So it would be smart for most of our listeners to go watch those videos and listen to these podcasts, because it's like paying $1,000 for a course online if you put the two of them together. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it is, and I'm not saying that for hype. I'm just because I've been told that.
That's true.
You know, between what we do here and what I show on those videos, it's like it's a lot of data.
Yep. I learned dribs and drabs and pieces of it years ago, and it cost hundreds of dollars. Yeah. And I didn't get it. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, what? It ended, the whole weekend ended with, okay, here's the deal. How would you make that work? And the entire audience like, you can't make that work. There's no equity. You can't do this, can't do that. Nope.
Right.
And then he had some idea, which is like, you know, rent, own, option, but you can't see it at first if you don't know what you're doing. So your details really makes it pop to life.
So, thank you. The 7 deals I'm just going to rattle off. If you want to get them in much more detail, then just go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/free stuff. So the first one, or the one on the top, and the reason why they go in this order is because we usually buy them with a certain amount of equity. So a slot deal, which is a sandwich lease option transfer, which we talked about last week, we're going to talk about again this week. So it's a sandwich lease option transfer. So we'll explain that in a minute. That's with no equity. So you can buy one of these up to 110% loan to value ratio.
So it's over. You can buy it over market price.
Over leveraged, yeah, and still make 3, 5, 10 grand more. Right. The next one down is options, and that has about 10% equity or 90% loan to value ratio. Next one down from there is a lease option, which is what we really call rent to own.
Yeah.
Right. That has 15% equity or 85% loan to value ratio. Next one down is getting the deed. Its nickname is subject to, which means you're buying the property subject to the underlying mortgage, because the person's deeding you the house and keeping the mortgage in their name. That's got an 80%. I'm sorry, it's got a 20% equity and 80% loan to value ratio. The next one below that is the famous and so advertised on all the cable TV channels, rehab retail. That's where you buy, fix, and flip.
Yep.
That has a 70% loan-to-value ratio and 30% equity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next one below that is wholesale, which is very similar to the rehab and retail, except you don't keep it and do the work. You actually sell to somebody for a fee. That has a 60% loan-to-value ratio and 30% equity.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one below that, which is number 7, is free and clear properties. And that's where I go over how you can buy a house for $260,000, sell it for $260,000, and make $84,000.
I like your math.
Yeah. And if you want to jump ahead, we're going to cover all these. We're going to cover these over the next couple of podcasts, so you can get a concept for all of them. Just go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/free stuff. Watch the videos, and it will make more sense when you listen to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not that you can't listen to the podcast and make sense of it anyways, but it's just when you see the math, because I can't really do the math over the podcast because it's there's no you can't see it.
Folks, grab a piece of paper,
Yeah.
get your pencil and your calculator, start writing.
Yeah, people are driving and listening to on lunch and all that kind of stuff. So,
Sure.
So in today's podcast, we're going to cover the first 3, which is the slot deal, the option deal, and the lease option.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm going to do that is because what they all have in common is the option.
Right.
Okay, so my expectation of today's podcast is to fully educate you on how extraordinary this concept is, because if you are not able to get a loan or have money or somehow or another put together a deal because of lack of funds, this is the way to do it. This is absolutely the way to do it. I've been doing it for 20 years.
You know, you could think this is a way to get started.
No.
But it's a way to keep going.
Yeah.
It's a way to stay going.
It's definitely a cash flow machine.
Yeah.
You know, it's a way that even with us, I mean, look at what you and I are doing. I mean, we do rehabs, we do a couple of them, 2, 3, 4 of them a year. Last year we did, I think, 1 or 2. This year we've done 1. Mm-hmm. Or no, we haven't done any yet this year.
Well, we're just starting the year. Yeah.
The point is those are nice and great checks, but what fills in the gaps? Where do you get the marketing money, the $3,000, the $5,000, the $10,000 to fill in the gaps?
Well, it's definitely not passive income.
Yeah.
It's not.
Exactly. Like last night I went out. I mean, lo and behold, I was kind of like begrudgingly. I have a bunch of work to do and I needed to be at my desk, but I had to go meet somebody at 6:30 last night to pick a check up for $7,000.
Your life is terrible.
So
your life is terrible.
There you go. But those little checks. Well, I say they're little. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I kind of got my foot in my mouth right now. Those checks definitely help a lot.
You could call it little when you compare to the full deal, start to middle to finish, and the whole banana when it's done.
Yeah, when you start making $70,000, $80,000 on big renovations, the $7,000 ones are a little checks.
No, I'm talking about even when on the lease options and rent to owns. Between deposit money, cash flow, and back end when you sell it a couple of years later, you put it all together. That's a little piece of the whole pie. So it's not just the deposit.
That's right.
You put the whole banana together, and it's a banana split when you're done. Come on. So it works out okay.
So I'm going to explain some of the minute details on how these options work. And hopefully the light bulb goes off, and you'll be sending me gifts. Hopefully cigars. All right, but before we fire into the options, I just wanted to mention that there are technically only 3 ways to make money with real estate. Yeah.
Now, you see, sometimes I think...
It's because we don't talk about the third way all the time.
Sometimes I think, isn't there a third way? But I keep my mouth shut because you're you. So go ahead.
There's only 3 ways to make money with real estate.
I had the right thing in
so
mind.
Equity...
Sure.
Which is where you buy low, sell high. Mm-hmm. Equity is synonymous. In other words, it's similar to profit.
Right.
So it's like, how much do you owe? How much are you getting? You subtract one from the other, and you get profit. That's equity is the same way.
Yeah.
A lot of people confuse equity with what they think they can get. Oh. So it was appraised for $300, so they take the $300 minus the $100 they owe, and they think they got $200,000 worth of equity. Problem is the physical universe doesn't always work the way our minds work. We see something in our mind one way, and when we implement it into the world, it comes out a different way.
Well, there's wishful thinking, and there's those dark things lurking in corners.
Right. So when we sell, we actually sell it for $250 or $275 and not $300.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. So equity is buy low, sell high. That's one way. Second way is cash flow, right? How much can you make on monthly income? Like the whole commercial industry, apartments, and it's all based on that.
Right.
Matter of fact, cash flow is so significant in that industry that they actually evaluate the properties based on the cash flow.
Yeah.
Right? That's how they know how much to pay for the properties. Right? Then the third one is fees. Like if you're going to be a realtor and fees, right? So we don't ever talk about that. That's why I don't say, there's only 2 ways to make money with real estate, and it's really 3 ways, but we don't talk about the fees. Except today we're going to talk about that.
Okay. Because we can get some fees.
We can do that, yeah.
Yeah, because,
Yeah, the problem is you can't use those. I try not to use that language because I really don't want one of my students like popping out with that language, especially in front of a realtor, because they will spaz out. Because that's the reason why they spend all the money to get their licenses, is so that they can get fees.
Right.
So it's not a good way to explain it, but we're going to go over that. So,
well, their fees are commission.
Right.
That's actually got set number within, a little teeny parameter.
Right.
Our fees are not quite commission. It's something else.
Right. So we don't normally
talk.
We normally don't talk about those fees because it's a. So
that's me. I'm wiggling the table.
Oh. It's my microphone's bouncing around, and I'm like, the hell's going on here?
Table.
I thought we were having an earthquake here in Connecticut, not in California. All right, so let's start off with, as always with me, let's start off with the definition of an option. Like, what is an option? Okay, because I even have coaching clients to this day that have been with me a year or two still don't understand this.
Oh.
And I know it, and they don't know that I know that they don't understand. But I've tried to explain it, and for some reason, they don't get it.
Wow.
Okay? It's just a mental block. So I'm going to try to pierce that with others right now. So an option is when the seller of the property actually sells the rights to market and sell the property to somebody else. So here's the deal. You own a piece of property. How do I know you own that piece of property?
I should have the deed.
Your name is on the deed. That says ownership. Deed equals ownership.
Right.
It's much like a title for a car. Your name on title, you own car.
Yep.
Cops come, they say name on title.
Yeah.
Says Pete. That's who they talk to is Pete.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
No title, no car.
Right. No title, no ticky.
Yeah. Right? No title, can't sell it. No title, can't buy it.
So real estate is the same way.
Yeah.
So you
sorry. I'm still chasing this house. I know I'm not supposed to, but the bank lost the house.
Yeah.
the tax office in my town is trying to collect $8,000, which is about three payments. And says certain bank, and you call the bank, says, "Oh no, we sold that 2 years ago." Well, that's funny. Nobody owns this poor orphan house.
Let's go buy the tax loan and just.
I offer, so I'll write you a check right now, $8,000. I'll buy the house. She says, "Sorry, we don't do it that way here." Yeah, but it's like you can't buy this house because nobody owns it. They
don't think they own it.
Well, they can't find out who does.
Yeah.
Anyways, but the deeds are slightly important.
We should talk about that because we should get the lawyer involved in that. So you have the deed in your name.
Yes.
So because the deed is in your name, what do you have to? What right do you? What can you do with that property?
The owner.
The deed in your name. What could you do with that property?
Whatever you want. Sure.
Damn well, please. You can burn it to the ground if you want.
Yeah.
You could do it. You could sell it. You can rent it. You can paint it. You can put UFOs on top of it. You could do whatever you want.
Because this is America.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So when you give me an option, you're giving me those similar rights.
But you would have it more listed out, which you can.
Hang on. Don't jump ahead.
Just listen,
Let's
Pete.
just
Just
go.
listen.
No, because I know you know what it is. So I just want to get it clear. So you have ownership rights.
Yeah.
And you're passing those to me.
Mm-hmm.
So now we both have it. Now you have more shares of rights than I do, but you're allowing me to take some of these rights with some parameters.
Right.
Okay. So what is rights? The word rights, RIGHTS, which by the way is a noun, not an adverb or a verb, which is how we normally use the word right or rights. So the definition of rights in a noun fashion would be the permission or property interest possessed under law with an agreement. So when you have the rights in real estate, now in stock market it's a little different, because you can buy rights to stocks too. This is where this comes from, right? Sure. So it's like the derivation or the derivative of stock markets, but we do it with houses, right? Yeah. So, or maybe we did it with houses and the stock market stole it.
I have no idea about where would this have started. Like some guy one day says, "Let me sell it for you." Like, you can't sell it for me; it's mine.
I don't know that.
Write something on a piece of paper that says you'll let me sell it for you. Well, what are you going to give me for it? I'll give you $100. Right. Okay. I mean, who did? One day somebody did that, right? Totally. I don't want to sell it. Well, I'll sell it for you. Yeah. Well, you can't sell it for me. Why? Because you don't own it.
Yeah.
Well,
how about?
Jeez.
All right. So the rights
I'm going to look up the derivation of option one of these when I get done.
So the permission. So the rights are the permission or property interest possessed. So it's either I'm giving you permission, right? And that's usually. Those are different documents. That's like a realtor contract.
Right.
Would be I give you permission to go sell my house for these fees.
Right.
Or the property interest, which is what we are going to get when we sign an option. We're going to explain that in a couple minutes, right? Possessed under law with an agreement. Okay? Or you could say this, the interest that one has, so the interest, not interest like principal and interest.
Not percentages.
Yeah, so the interest meaning like the concern, right? Right? Am I being clear here? So the interest that one has in a piece of property, which gives them the power or privilege which one is justly entitled. So you're entitling me to sell this property under the parameters that we set.
Yep.
And by buying these rights, you automatically have an equitable interest in the property. Okay, so the rights gives me an equitable interest in this house. Okay, sounds like a lot of technical stuff. Believe me, it's done with one piece of paper.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not something fancy. Sometimes two pieces. It depends on which option agreement you use. Right? Which means you don't need to have a license because you have an equitable interest in this property because you bought the rights. That's your equitable interest. Is you bought rights to go sell this property with predetermined terms. Right? Which means you don't need to have a license to do the transaction and you're technically part owner. Right? Now, it doesn't mean that you can go tell the owner what to do because you're a minority owner, but the option actually, by getting the rights to sell this property, the way it's done is you're actually a principal equity share of the property, which allows you to be able to go sell it without having a license.
Right.
A realtor doesn't have any equitable share in the real estate, right? They just have a contract. Now, why would they do that?
The contract?
No, why would they not do what we do?
Well, they don't have as much responsibility to it. If it doesn't sell, they just walk away.
Right. So the reason why they don't do that, flunk by the way.
Damn.
So the reason why they don't do that is because of their fee structure. Okay, so their contracts are much more stricter in court on the 5 and 6% that they so think they deserve, right? So they're getting paid off of the actual money brought to the table.
Right.
So if I was a realtor and I was selling a house for $200,000, right? Yeah. Why would I want to do an option and have that money come 2 years from now?
Oh,
because I want my commission now.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I were to do a rental property, a rent to own, right? Which we're going to talk about in a minute. I would get first month's rent. Say it's $1,500, and if it's a clever realtor, they'll ask for commission on the option when it executes in 2 years from now. Most of them don't think of that, so they don't do that, right? So they just get the $1,500. So let me think. I got a $200,000 house, right?
Yeah.
And I get, we'll say 5%. That's $10,000, and I get a piece of that, or I get $1,500. Which one do you think they want to do?
Yeah.
Right? So it's all driven by money. Go listen to episode number 90, which is Battling the Real Estate Mafia, and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. They're only interested in their fees. That's the way they are. Right? So, now, here's the amazing part. This is the amazing part. This is truly a $1 million strategy. There's two places I say this. Right now, and when I talk about subject to deals. Those are the two multi-million-dollar strategies. You meaning you, Peter, or any listener, could become, could acquire millions of dollars of real estate doing this, or when I talk about subject to, probably next week.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Next episode.
Yeah.
You do these two things, and you could literally, and they're hand in hand. They work wonders with one another, because you can buy with subject to and sell on lease options, or you can buy on lease options and I was going to say sell with subject to, but we're not going to talk about that. Which you could do that.
You could do that?
Why not?
Oh, jeez.
So here's the amazing part. When I buy the rights from you, there's no predetermined dollar amount.
Right.
So the only thing is I have to give you legal tender. And in case you don't understand what that means, the definition of legal tender means paper money, not coins. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but the government can print coins, not paper money, which is why we have the Federal Reserve, which is a privately held company, because the government, by law, the Constitution of the United States, is not allowed to print money.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So before the Federal Reserve, there was no paper money?
Well, there was, but it wasn't fiat money. Do you know what fiat money is?
I forget.
Yeah, so fiat money is money that has to be used in a society by law. See, like right now, technically, if you go to Canada and bring back Canadian money, you could be arrested for that, because it's not America's fiat money.
Right.
So what they did, and if you want to understand this, just go on to either Amazon or YouTube and just look up The Creature from Jekyll Island, and you'll get most of it there. Bruce Wiseman wrote a book too, but it's under a different name. I forgot. I think it's called The Economy. It's a shorter book, but much more. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I remember. I know what you're talking. I can't remember it though.
Economy by Structure, I think it is. Could you look that up for me, please?
He used a pen name, didn't he?
Yeah, his real name is Bruce Wiseman, but
yeah, money. So
going.
Say
back,
that again.
So you have to have legal tender,
and it couldn't be actual like real metal money coin.
In today's society, you would write a check.
Yeah.
Because really, I mean, think about it. Money's backed by confidence.
Yeah.
So if I give you $10, you need to be confident that you can take that $10 and go somewhere else and use it and not be rejected.
Sure.
Right. So a check is that way. If I give you a check, you need to have the confidence that you can go into the bank or you can cash it and get the money. Did you find it? Design.
Economy by Design?
No. Yeah, something like that. Design. Huh? Yeah. Well, I don't have an author name. If I had an author name. Oh, look at her. She's all snotty and shit. Knock it off. I don't know his name. His real name is Bruce Wiseman. And anyways, don't worry about it. Crisis by Design.
Yeah.
Crisis by Design. I think that's the name of the book. spending way too much time on
Yeah,
this.
and there's a lot of books on this. I read something, I don't know, 40 years ago by accident. So it's not a couple of random weird ideas. It's just a number of reports that keep getting issued in different authors, different books about the same situation, which has been going on. It's real.
That's not Internet Crisis by Design. That's the author. I have to go find. I don't even know where the book is. Anyway, so let's go. So legal tender.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm telling you is this, and a long conversation here is: you write an option agreement. What makes it legal is you have to give the person $1.
Mm-hmm.
Now you could give him $1. You can give him 10. You can give him 100. We give 100.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just because it's real estate and it seems more legit.
Yeah.
Right? But you can give him $1. Okay.
Yeah.
Used to be I went in my pocket and I gave him the cash. Nowadays I write a check so I have a record of it.
Right.
Okay. Once you do that, the agreement needs to cover these couple things. You need to make sure these things are in the agreement to be so everybody's protected. So you need to make sure that you know what price you need to pay. Right. So what you agreed upon as a price. Right. And then you have to know when you have to pay it by.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You need to make sure that there's language on this document that says that the seller is promising to give you a clean title, because you don't want to encumber, which means take on his liens and his debt. Okay. Although I love those titles. I love taking on debt. I love that. That's the best part. When I get those, I get excited.
Well, you can solve a problem. You just made more money.
Right.
Because every problem, needs
just
to
to
be
divert
fixed.
for a second, one thing that I learned a long time ago, and I've actually did this once. I only did it once.
Oh.
But somebody had a bunch of money on their deed, an IRS lien.
Oh.
And I bought the property subject to, which means I put the deed in my name.
Yeah.
And a trust.
Yeah.
And I was the trustee. My partner was the beneficiary.
Yeah.
At the time. I called the IRS up and said, could you take your lien off my property, please? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I own the property. I don't have a lien with the IRS. Why do you need me to sue you? And they took the lien off because they want the person, not the property.
Yeah, but the house doesn't owe the money. The guy does. If the guy doesn't have the house.
So how many people know that?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I love liens, because
I'm almost surprised you could sell it with a lien like that. But if you can, you can.
You can't.
Oh, because you didn't go through the whole.
Yeah, I didn't go through attorneys and stuff because they'd be freaked out about that. Me, I just transferred the deed.
The bank, yeah.
I just transferred the deed from their name to my name, put the deed in my name, because I knew I wasn't going to have to pay the debt.
Yeah.
Right.
And then when the guy gets some money from the deal, eventually he should pay his own IRS tax.
Whatever.
Right.
Or whatever other assets. So anyway, so you got to promise. You got to make sure that the document has a promise in there, or it has language in there that the seller is going to give you a clean deed. Right. You obviously want to make sure that the zoning is good, because there's a lot of language on titles and stuff that the zoning, encroachments and easements and all that kind of stuff. I'm doing more of it now than I did in the past, but when I use options, I'm not always as strict with this stuff because I don't have to worry about it until the deed actually passes. So that could be 2 years down the road. Mm-hmm. And a slot deal, I don't do it, but in my lease option deals, like for example, a subject to deal I just did, which is I keep jumping around. I bought title insurance. I did title searches. I do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're probably smart to do that in the beginning. I wasn't for a very long time, but if you're doing a lease option, it's not horrible to spend a couple $100 and have a title search done prior to entering into an agreement.
Yeah. Well, you're not as worried about that because I've watched you. No matter what it is, you're pretty sure you can figure out a way to fix it, and you do. Right. Somebody newer with less experience, they run into a couple of problems. They might freak out, like, how do you fix that? And the lawyer says you don't know how, but you always find a way to do that.
Yeah.
So if you're not as gutsy or experienced, don't.
But I would just check make sure zoning. You need to make sure that if you're buying a single-family house, it's zoned for single-family house. So sometimes that's just a visit down to the town hall. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can do it online. I don't get crazy about it because there's language in my contract that says it has to be compliance. Otherwise, you got to let me out of the agreement.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So, the last thing is obviously who's the agreement with? Obviously, it's between Pete and Bill.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get all that. So I give you $1. We have this 1-page document or 2-page document that clarifies some of these things, right? So here's the truly amazing part. This is what is truly amazing. And it really is truly amazing. I mean, I don't need to be here right now saying this. I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to somebody else. I'm not trying to sell anything. It is just naturally, truly amazing. Okay? You make a deal with the seller, right? You transcribe it. In other words, put it in writing onto this agreement. Mm-hmm. Okay? You give the guy or the girl $1, $10, or $100 for the rights to have this deal. Mm-hmm. So you can now go market it and find a buyer, right? Now you go off and you look for a buyer. Now the truly amazing thing is the buyer is going to pay the seller the agreements you just made with the seller. You aren't paying that. Mm-hmm. So if I say to you, Pete, I want to buy your house for $190,000. I'm not paying the $100,000. I don't need to go raise $190,000. I don't need to get a bank loan. I don't have to do anything like that.
Yeah.
All I have to do is transfer my rights from me to the buyer, and they'll be responsible for bringing that money to the table. And a lot of people miss that, right? So we talked about...
That's the whole point, though, isn't it?
Yeah. We talked about in other episodes, which I don't know what the numbers are now, about where do you get money for real estate.
Yeah.
And one of the ones is to get it from your buyer. This is how you do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can go to banks, you can go to private lenders, you can go to, hard money lenders, mm-hmm. We went through a whole list of them, right?
Yeah.
And if you really need to know what it is, just send me a support ticket and I'll go find it. I don't have it on the top of my head right now, but point is one of those is the buyers, and this is the way you do it. Mm. Okay, so you actually transfer the rights to your buyer, and they're the one that's going to pay the promises. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you write the check, they're going to cash it. You write the check with your seller, and then mm-hmm. the buyer is going to cash it. Mm-hmm. Right, the buyer's going to make it cashable.
Yeah,
but probably a better way to say it, right? So now you go off and you look for your buyer and you make a deal with them. Okay?
Question?
Yeah.
I've seen you do this, so I don't think it's a big issue. But how much do you think in your head when you make the promise that a buyer would do that, or it's feasible? It isn't outrageous.
100%.
I mean, as far as just numbers, not that the system works, just the numbers. You keep it like...
Yeah, I'm going to cover that in a minute.
Okay, so you keep the numbers, so, okay.
Yeah, so at this particular point, you fall into Nelson Rockefeller's number one rule. Mm-hmm. Right? They call him Rockefeller. His first name was Nelson. I looked it up. Nelson Rockefeller's rule is, the secret to success is to own nothing but control everything. Mm. Right, so he wrote that back in the early 1900s. So Nelson Rockefeller, which was one of the original, he was the original Rockefeller, said the secret to success is to own nothing but control everything. Okay. Now, before we go into the deal structuring, I want to point out some amazing things that we just talked about. Okay, if you put no money in the deal, right? How can you lose anything? You said that at the beginning of the deal, mm-hmm. at the beginning of the show, right? Mm-hmm. If you put no money in the deal, how can you lose anything? Right? How much education do you need to become an expert in options? To be honest with you, this podcast would be enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, if you know how to rent something, or you know how to lease something to somebody else, if you can rent something for yourself and lease something to somebody else or rent something to somebody else, that's it. It's right. Step one, step two.
Right.
And you have some of the marketing to find one and find the other.
Yeah. Point is you can go on to Zillow and just set the filter on Zillow for renters, mm-hmm. Between a certain price range, we'll say between $500 and $1,500, right? And with how many bedrooms and baths you want, right? And have at it. Start calling renters and say, would you consider doing a rent to own? Mm-hmm. And you'll find one.
Yeah.
So how much education do you need for that?
You need 2 sentences.
And most people are going to be like, how do you find the paperwork? Well, you know what? Just type in Google lease option or option agreements. Now, are they going to be the best one? Are they going to be for your state? I don't know. But it's something. You can go on my website, flippinghousesforrookies.com, and on the top right-hand side, it says courses. I have a whole package of all my documents, all the documents I use to date. Matter of fact, it's gotten easier for me because I go into my own portal when I need documents and I print them, and that's what I use.
You get them from yourself, in other words?
Yeah, imagine that. Instead of going through my computer looking for documents, because they're kind of like a little bit here, a little bit there, right? Because I've accumulated them over 15 years worth of doing business, right? Or actually 18 years, but 15 years doing deals, right?
Yeah.
So they're there. All right, so the paperwork is not the issue. The only issue there is a person that thinks they need to do the paperwork or thinks they have paperwork are just in a fear factor. Just leap. Don't do anything. Just go get one and go do it, because you have no money in the deal. So you're going to put up $100 or $10 or $1 and you're worried about that? Come on, give me a break. You're worried about legal ramifications? The document will explain it.
Yeah.
You know? All right.
And these aren't new. Just in case you're thinking, oh, it's just some newfangled thing Bill and some other guys came up with. No, I said this before. My mechanic used to be a broker. So they own a company, and they used to do that. I said, oh, yeah, we do that in the old days. They've been doing this for decades and decades and decades. We're just trying to get it to be more used.
Realtors were on the bar.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that complicated. Like, hey, I can't sell my house. Want to rent it? Yeah. You think you want to buy it down the road? Okay. I'll rent it for a while, and you can buy it later.
Yep.
That's
the education.
I mean, people make this stuff up when you leave them alone, and then you make it official, make some paperwork for it, and then you go look for it.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff happened organically.
So far, we can use options on the 3 money centers we talk about all the time. So it'd be money now, which would be the deposit, right? It would be money monthly, which would be the difference between what we have to pay for the mortgage and the taxes and insurance and all that stuff to what we collect, right? And then money later would be the amount of equity we had.
Right.
Right? So...
Yeah, when the house finally changes hands, the mortgage gets paid, money happens, you get a decent piece of that equity. That's why you buy it or you rent to own and keep in the deal when there's 15% equity.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far. You keep jumping ahead. You're right. You're 100% correct.
Just listen, Pete. Just listen.
No, you're all right. It's just. I want to make sure it's in nice, clean order so we can understand this. I'm being a little picky about that. So... All right, so let's get into some deal structuring now. And first, I want to cover what is a slot deal.
Yep.
Which is a sandwich, lease, option, transfer. That's the key, right? Here, we get the seller to agree on giving us a minimum of 2 years before they get paid off. So that means we're going to pay them monthly for 2 years, 24 months, before we get them paid off. Now, we could do it sooner.
This is the slot deal?
Right. Why do you look confused?
I thought we did the slot deal in 90 days and then left.
Okay. See what I mean?
Yep.
This is why I'm doing this, because if you're confused about that... Okay, so
you put a 2-year window on the slot deal?
Okay, so you're not making sense to me. I'm confused. So if I come to you and say, Peter, I want to do a slot deal with you, right? I'm going to go find you a tenant that's going to pay you for 2 years before they can get you paid off.
Yes. Oh, they do, sure. But we don't stay in the deal.
So I just said, here we get the seller to agree on giving us a minimum of 2 years,
right,
before we need to pay them off. We're not staying there for 2 years.
Yeah, I thought we were staying, and that's why I said that. Yeah, no, but
we will sell it within we will get in and get out within 90 days.
Right, we find the buyer,
but the buyer is going to have 2 years with the seller.
No, I get it.
Okay? Of course, we find the buyer that is willing to pay the monthly payments and do all the repairs, maintenance, shovel the snow, cut the grass, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So now the slot deal means that the sandwich lease option transfer simply means that we just don't stay in the deal. So it's a sandwich lease option transfer. Transfer means we get out of the deal because there's no money in it.
Yeah. The option transfers.
The option, everything you do transfers to the buyer.
Right.
Okay. So we'll find a sellable, we'll find a seller that's favorable and qualified as a tenant, right? That will be able to get a mortgage within the 2-year allotted time with the option agreement. Now, how do you know that? You don't have a crystal ball. Doesn't matter, because your seller's going to say to you, what happens if they don't get a mortgage in the 2 years? And your response will be something similar to, we'll do it again. That's the answer. Because you don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
But they lose the option when it expires in the 2 years, unless somebody wants to renew it. They lose, so they have to leave. They didn't fulfill their part of the contract, so they have to go and find somebody else.
That's right. Or put more money up and do it again. Okay. So if we have an agreement with our seller, we'll say for $190,000. Okay, so we're going to buy. We're promising to pay. We have the rights to bring $190,000 and buy this property.
Yep.
Okay. And pay their expenses, we'll say for this scenario, $1,500 a month.
Yep.
So that pays the taxes, the insurance, principal, interest, condo fees, whatever.
Yeah.
Total expenses are $1,500 a month. Okay. Which, by the way, when I'm talking to you, I say to you, Peter, how much will you be willing to take for the house? Actually, it's not even that. Peter, how much do you owe on the house?
I owe $190.
That's what I'll pay. How much are your monthly payments with all the taxes, insurance, and all the fees?
About $1,500.
That's what I'll pay. So, what education do we need now? Okay, let's do it again, just in case somebody missed how simple it was. Peter, how much?
Can I try different numbers just to?
Sure.
Right.
Peter, how much do you owe on the house?
I owe about $175.
Good. So that's how much I'll give you. Okay.
Okay.
And how much are your monthly payments with the taxes, insurance, and any other stuff in there?
It's $1,350.
Good. So that's what I'm going to give you every month for 2 years. Okay. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the script.
Yeah.
In a slot deal.
Yeah.
There's no trick there.
No, there's no trick because in a slot deal, the house, there's no equity in the house. The seller doesn't get any money no matter what happens.
Right.
If he sells it, he loses money.
Usually.
If he rents it, he has a problem. It's a pain in the butt.
No, I want to clarify when you say that, because that confuses people when you say that.
What?
Because you could have a free and clear house.
Yeah.
And still do a slot deal.
That's true.
Because they could be stuck on their number, and it might be 5 or 10% above market value. So you can still do a slot deal on a free and clear house.
You can do a slot deal. Can you do it on any deal
you can do it
under?
On anything. Because what happens is the slot deal means that you, as the investor, don't have equity and you don't have cash flow, either because there isn't any because of the debt or the encumbrances on the property, right? Or the seller's not willing to go any lower than his price.
Yeah. And the only way to get that price is to find somebody willing to pay a little more.
So instead of just walking away saying, I can't buy low, sell high, I can't make any cash flow monthly, right? Which is what I did for 15 years or 13 years, a very long time, right? Instead of walking away and saying there's no deal there, I could say, okay, so if you want, $175,000 for your $160,000 house, no problem. Here's how it works. I'm going to go find a buyer that will rent from you for 2 years, and in that 2-year period, they'll go get a favorable mortgage and pay you off. If you're willing to do that, then there you go. And in technical aspect, you're charging a fee because you're going to go sell that house for not 175, maybe 180.
Yeah.
You're going to advertise it for 180. They're going to give you $5,000 down so that I can have the agreement say they owe you 175.
Yeah.
And you're going to make $5,000 for doing that. Why not do that? Those are deals that you can throw away in the garbage pail. That we used to throw away in the garbage pail.
Right.
Right? They were circular file, as we used to say, right? It's not my joke. Okay. So in this case, I have an option agreement from you for $190 and $1,500 a month. So I go find a buyer that will pay $200,000, right? Because like we always talk about, if I have the computer that we're recording this on right now, I pay $2,500 for it.
Right.
Or $2,300 for it. It's a Mac, right? And I love it. So don't send me a support ticket telling me that I'm a loser because I own Macs. So if I were to sell you that computer today for $1,000 in cash, how much are you paying for that computer?
$1,000.
Because you're giving me money today, right? But it's of value because the computer is worth $2,000, $2,500. I mean, the computer's brand new. I could sell it on eBay or one of those sites for at least $2,000, $1,800, something. It's worth more than $1,000. That's what my point is, right? So if you gave me $1,000 for my computer today and you paid cash, that's what you paid. Now, what happens if you took that same $1,000 computer and you swiped your credit card and made 24 payments?
Sure.
You're paying more than $1,000. You're paying a premium price for the computer probably, right?
Yep.
Houses are the same way. So a person that can't pay for the house today because they don't qualify for a mortgage for whatever reason, they can't get a mortgage for whatever reason, they don't, and they got a whole story. They want to pay on payments. They will pay a premium price. So they will pay the $200,000. It's not mean. We're not taking advantage of them. None of that. It's just the laws of our land.
Well, they would
pay now, get it cheaper, pay later, pay more.
Yeah, but they don't get the house unless they find somebody like us or the listeners.
Right.
So do we do it for free?
Right.
No, yeah. So we don't get $18,000 or $80,000. Could be 18.
Right.
So I stopped. Yeah. So it's just something to facilitate the deal, and everybody's happy.
So him or her, the buyer, paying $200,000 is not outrageous. Now, going back to what a question you asked earlier about how far can you push the limit on these numbers, I say not more than 5 or 10%
of market price.
Right.
Okay.
So if this house is worth $200,000, you can push it to $220,000.
Right.
That would be the max. And here's the reason why. You don't have to do that. You could be unethical if you'd like to. That's not my wheelhouse. Okay. Reason why is because excuse me, and it's a lot deal. You're going to hang your seller with your buyer.
Right.
So you can get a buyer that will pay $240,000, give you $10,000 down and owe $230,000, and your seller's like, oh, look at all that money I'm going to get. And then they go at the end of 2 years to qualify for the mortgage, and the mortgage company says, it's only worth $200,000.
So when it gets appraised, it doesn't fly, so they can't give the loan.
So you could be unethical, and you could put that deal together, and then 2 years from now they won't get financed, and your seller will be on the hot. Now, maybe your seller is a jerk, and you want to do that. I'd rather which I've had.
Then you're a jerk too.
Yeah. So I don't do business that way, but I'm telling you could.
No.
Okay, and some people will, right?
But the bank is a limiting factor, ultimately.
Right. Now, you can't tell what the economy is going to be in 2 years anyways.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you right now, if the bank won't lend me the money because of economy factors, it's everybody. It's not just me.
Right.
So at that particular point, we're going back to the seller saying, the economy, blah, 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 here's what we got to do. And they're going to understand, or they're going to be compliant to that because the whole environment is that way.
So they'll sell for the lower amount?
Whatever.
They could.
Maybe we'll just renew for another year. There's a whole bunch of ways to deal with that.
But you don't have to just walk away from it. You can just restructure a little bit and take a lower amount, stick around a little bit longer.
Right. In that particular case, now watch this. Pay attention, okay? Because this is not something we talk about ever. I don't talk about it ever, okay? You could technically, if you don't want to do what we're talking about, well, let me stick with what we're talking about first. At the 2 year mark, the economy's like blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And they don't qualify. You could walk back into the deal and keep your buyer and seller going and charge your seller 1 month's rent as a consulting fee, not a fee for doing the deal, a consulting fee to either rewrite or have him rewrite, consult him on how to rewrite the contracts.
Right.
To go another year or two, or add addendums to those documents so that they stay legal and they keep everything going.
Right.
You could charge a 1 month or 2 month consulting fee to evict somebody.
No.
So the house could be vacant again, and then you can do it over again. You could charge a consulting fee to help the seller negotiate a new deal with. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So it's all things that your education is providing you. It depends on how much your education is.
It's very creative, isn't it?
Okay.
Well,
to me, it's just common sense.
Sure. Well,
and I only did this because look at jewelry. I did a deal for jewelry, right?
Yeah.
And like that's what I charged her. I charged her, and not even realizing what I was doing when I was doing it, I charged her a 1 month fee to help her set up a slot deal. So I just charged her a 1 month fee. So I made like $1,500 to do like 2 hours worth of work.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 hours because we went out there. Right.
Yep.
I was doing it without even knowing I was doing it.
Yeah. Well, you didn't want to charge her too much because she's a friend of ours, but she didn't want to have you do it for free because you're working.
Well, so, I know she can't go to a lawyer's office and have them do what I did.
No.
And she owed too much on the property. Her husband had Alzheimer's, pretty bad. Her family's she lived at the time in Connecticut, Rocky Hill, Connecticut, or we're Cromwell, Connecticut, right? Husband's families, her sons, and the family are all in Pennsylvania, and she needs help because the husband is like pretty bad off.
Yeah.
So what do? They sell the property. They had to come up was book perfect.
Yeah.
I think they had to come up with $18,000 they didn't have, or they have to put it on a credit card. And they're like, no. So I came in and I consulted her.
Yeah.
And told her do this and do that, and I interviewed the girl with her. I didn't do it. She did it. I just sat there. Right. We talked a little while and we made some decisions, and 3 weeks later they were moving.
Yep.
Right. And I got paid $1,500 to do all that. What's the matter with that?
Well, it's way beyond what's the matter with that. If you didn't do that, there'd be a big problem. $18,000.
The problem is that we make it too damn difficult in our heads. Simplicity is hard to come by.
Well, you don't see this every day, although it happens every day because it's not on TV, it's not around, just with people like us training.
So here's an example, and then I'm going to totally get off this tangent. If I were to go out on a boat off of the Long Island Sound, and I went 200 feet underwater, is there air there?
No.
That's what most people would say. There's no air there, right?
Yeah.
But what happens if I put air there? What happens if I put a mask on? Or if I had an air tank on my back? Right? Or if there was actually a little submarine down there, and I can get in the submarine. Would there be air there?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like you can't just look at something for what it is. It's too simple. You could put air 200 feet below the water.
You can do something.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's necessity level. It's the demand. What do they say? Necessity is the mother of an invention.
Yeah.
Right? So here I have this person that's a friend that wants me to do this for her, and she wants to do it herself, doesn't want me to do it because she doesn't want to inconvenience me. So it's the mother of invention. There you go. So if you just loosen up and realize that an option is really easy.
Yeah.
It's the easiest way to do business. I mean, for God's sake, a fifth grader could do it, honestly. And I'm not insulting any of my listeners, but if you think that if a fifth grader can do it, how come I can't? How come I have all these questions? How come I have all these? And you run around and you talk to lawyers and you talk to realtors and you talk to all the wrong people for approval to do the deal, instead of just asking your seller for approval and asking your buyer for approval. You're asking the wrong people for approval. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so here's the logistics of this transaction, right? The $190 and $1,500 a month. Here's the logistics. We're going to make a transfer of the rights for the property.
Right.
Okay, so the buyer is going to pay us $10,000 because we sold it for $200. He's going to give us $10,000, owes $190.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and pay $1,500 a month. So the buyer is going to give us $10,000 to buy the rights like we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Once we transfer the rights or the option, we'll draft a lease up to go along with the rules of the occupancy. Because the option is one agreement for purchasing the house. The lease is for occupancy rules and regulations, like the now I'm supposed to's and here's what I can and can't do.
Right.
Including if I default and all that kind of stuff. And those two documents are separate documents, but actually my documents have language in there where they cross default. So if you default on the lease, you automatically default on the option. If you default on the option, you automatically default on the lease.
Yeah.
And I never use that, but the cross default language is specific for that reason because I could pull that card anytime I want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's like important. So living in the property, they're living in the property, and the seller doesn't. So your tenant, let me start over. Your tenant lives in the property.
Right.
And the seller doesn't have landlord obligations because of the way the occupancy or the lease is written. You're telling the buyer that they're purchasing a property. Mm-hmm. They're not renting. So technically the seller is the intermediate bank.
Right.
So I tell both parties, if you have a clogged toilet, do you call your bank and tell them to come unclog the toilet? If it snows tonight, do you call them in the morning and say, come plow my driveway? Right? If a tree falls down, do you call your bank and say a tree fell down? No. Right? That's the position you're putting your seller in by doing this agreement correctly.
Right.
Okay? So you're not putting your seller in the position of being a landlord. Mm-hmm. Okay? You're putting them in the position of the bank or the money guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
And the tenant is more than a tenant. We call it tenant buyer. It's almost like we should have a new word for that because it's not just a tenant buyer, but they consider themselves the owners of the house. Look, we have a house. This is our house.
And nobody knows except us.
Yeah. And we have the family over. This is our new house.
Right.
Oh, nice house.
Right. Yeah, we just bought this house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the magic. So I paid $100 for the rights of this property. I sold it for $10,000. So what did I buy and sell?
The rights.
A piece of paper.
Yeah.
Or two pieces of paper.
Yeah.
I did not buy the property or sell the property.
Mm-mm.
The only way you can do that is with a purchase and sales contract and a closing.
Right.
This is lighter than a purchase and sales contract and a closing. Which, by the way, could we sign this lease for 20 years? I'm sorry, could we sign this option and lease for 20 years?
I suppose.
If the seller agrees to it.
Mm.
They can go as long as they want. A purchase and sales agreement usually doesn't go past 90 days.
Yeah.
Without having, addendums and extensions.
Sure.
And, right? And the reason why is because a purchase and sales agreement is designed as a roadmap to get to the closing, and definition of closing is deed passes from one name to another.
Right.
Right? Which, as a caveat here, realize there's only four entities that can own a piece of real estate. Okay, we're going to talk about this next week when we talk about subject 2, but the four entities are a personal name, which could be your name or my name, an LLC, a partnership, or a trust.
Okay.
Those are the four entities. Okay. So we're not transferring that entity possession at all. All we're doing is promising to do that.
Oh, right.
With an option.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is seems very complicated, and I know that I'm probably over dramatizing it, but I want to make it so that you really understand it. You're buying the rights to change the entity structure.
Right.
You're not changing the entity structure or committing that you're even going to do it.
That's right. If it doesn't work, if you never get a buyer in the 90 days or the 2 years,
you walk away. You lose your $100. Because here's the thing: is when our buyer gives us $10,000 to buy the rights, because you're buying the rights, you're not buying the property.
Mm-hmm.
The $10,000 is non-refundable.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you forfeit your rights by abandoning the agreement, you lose your rights. It's that way in the stock market.
Yeah, you didn't fulfill your promise.
Right.
But even if it was a deposit, you buy a house, you put $10,000 down, you leave. The bank doesn't go, oh, here's your $10,000.
Exactly.
Here's your money back. Like, who gives money back?
That's right.
Sorry.
That's exactly right.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
question: if you have like the 2 years with the seller for the option, do you make the lease 2 years as well?
Yeah, I match the documents.
Yeah, you don't do a year. Just do the 2 years.
Right.
Okay.
There have been times where I've done both.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll have a stubborn seller, which, by the way, I have found that what the seller wants today is not what they want by Sunday. Or better yet, a month from now.
Really?
Or 3 months from now, because time changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I have in the past made deals where I would say, okay, I'll put a buyer in there for 1 year because they're stuck on 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I'll do that for 1 year. But I need to have the ability to renew for a second year or renew the term.
Right.
That's what its technical name is, renew the term. So if the term is 12 months, I want to be able to renew that term, which is the 12 months.
Yeah, the same term
so
of 12.
So if I don't perform, I have the right to renew.
Right.
Okay. So that language sometimes will help the seller. That's because in a year from now, once they get their money and they're not thinking about it like they're thinking about it now, because right now it's a problem for them.
Mm-hmm.
And a year from now,
is it going to work?
Yeah. And a year from now, when all their payments are made, and you and the seller have made some sort of a relationship, even if it's just by the fact of you doing what you're doing by making the payments, they'll be like, yeah, I'll do another year.
Yeah.
Right. So time changes everything. I'm a little cautious on talking about that because I don't want the lack of talent to do that first. In other words, that's kind of an advanced strategy. So I don't want somebody to go in and say, yeah, we could do a year and promise that. You know, kind of like,
no.
Like drop their pants right away type of a thing. You know what I mean?
No.
I prefer not to do that because it's a little bit more of an advanced strategy. And you should only be doing that if you know you got a big, maybe an $800,000, $1 million house, like where an $800,000 house, which by the way, you're better off to do slot deals on the bigger houses, right? Because an $800,000 house it's a jumbo loan where we're at,
right?
Which means you need 20% down. There is no FHA or government loans.
There's no 3% down, 1% down,
right.
Nothing down.
So you're going to need to have 20% down. So if your buyer only has 10% down, what's 10% of 800,000?
80.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot more money than $5 or $10,000.
Right.
Only thing is you have to be careful that if you get 80,000, how much of that are you going to get? So if you promise to pay your seller, you sign the option for $850. I'm sorry, it's an $800,000 house. You sign an option for $750 and sell for $800, and you get $80,000 down. You can only keep $50,000 of that money. You got to give them the other $30,000.
Sure.
Because they have to pay down their mortgage or whatever, right? But the point is you don't want to have them come to you at the closing 2 years from now and say, "Where's my $30,000?"
Right.
You don't want to do that. Okay. But the bigger the numbers, the more money you make mathematically.
Sure.
Right. So specializing in those houses, I could have a student do, and I have had this. I had a student do one of those or two of those a year, and they're all of a sudden making $200,000 a year. Doing two houses, like what we're talking about right now, because they live in an environment where, they're like, Westport, Connecticut, where the average house, or Fairfield, Connecticut, the average house is like 1.5 million. And I have coaching clients that are buying houses for 800, 900,000. That's considered the low end of the market.
Imagine that.
And those houses are there being purchased by the wannabes who want to be in that environment because of schools and status and, jobs and all that kind of stuff. They're buying the address. They're not technically buying the house. They want to be in that community.
And where do you live?
Right.
Boom, they drop that name.
Exactly. So I don't take what I'm teaching here lightly, because literally, I mean, if I know most people I know, and I hope I don't say something wrong here. They do one deal and make 50 or 80 grand. That covers their salary for the year. Mm-hmm. Sometimes twice their salary.
A regular job.
Yeah.
An average. That's what it is.
So how hard is it to concentrate on those bigger balloons or those bigger numbers and do one slot deal where you go find the right buyer and put the two of them together? It's not hard.
No, but that works better if it's in that normal environment neighborhood, not like the $100,000 $1 million house in the $200,000 neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. So it would be in a community where they're selling. I mean, this is not a criteria, but it's kind of rule of thumb. It's like the average house is selling for 1.3, 1.5, and you find somebody that has an $800,000 house, right? And it may not be the same comparable. Like the 1.5 has 5,000 square feet, and your house has 2,000 square feet, right? There is somebody that will live in that house because they want to be in that environment. They want to be in that area,
okay,
right? So here's the thing. How much training do you need to do that? How much you bought this deal for $100, even if you paid $1,000 for the rights, right? And sold them for 50, 80 grand. I mean, come on. I mean, how much? I mean, the only thing that I could do for people listening right now that would be simpler is if I got on an airplane, went to their area, found the deal for them, did the deal, did the paperwork, and handed it to them on a golden platter. It's like, here's your check. I mean, that's just not possible. I'm just not going to do that. Why would I do that? Why would anybody do that?
Yeah. This
is the next step up on the gradient scale. Like, how much easier could it get?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we need to move on because we're way past time here. So we made money on this deal, totally risk-free, totally safe, none of your money at risk, right? Perfect way to learn how to do real estate while you're doing it. This is a perfect way, because the only way you're going to learn how to do real estate is to do it. This is the way you do it. This is how you learn to do real estate while you do it. You put yourself in an environment that doesn't attack you if you do something wrong. And in this particular case, this is that environment, using options, right? Don't put yourself in a environment like a rehab retail deal with the deeds in your name and you got all kinds of money and you borrow all this money, and if you don't perform, you get attacked.
Yeah.
Why do that? Right? Now, here you might get attacked by your seller because you didn't perform, and if you do it right, you probably will have told them that you're new and that this is your first deal, which they'll help you, most of them, right? So they'll be pissed off at you and they might lunge out at you, but that's as far as it goes. You're going to get attacked, but there's no substance to the attack other than they're just pissed because they didn't get what they wanted.
You know, I had a couple that didn't work out, but it was like it wasn't set up to be really easy to do. It was a little weird.
Yeah.
And nobody got really upset because they understood.
Right.
You know, really, really good, really beautiful big house in a bad neighborhood. It was just like, it didn't work out so well.
And you had no vacancy. I like to deal with vacant slot.
Yeah, I had vacant
people
one
living in there.
Yeah, made it much trickier.
You have to. It's hard.
But nobody really got upset because they understood. Right. I mean, how upset you get at the realtor when he doesn't sell your house? Like, nobody's promising to sell your house. The realtor, us, no one's promising.
Right.
And if I don't sell it, I'll buy it from you. Who does that?
Right. The promise is, well, we do that, but the promise is that you're going to bring it to the market and find out. Let the market tell you what a house is worth. Right. All right. So that's a slot deal that you can pay up to 110% of the property value and still make 3, 5, 10 grand or more. Okay? Hopefully I've cleared that up. Hopefully that makes total sense. Now, when you stay in the deal, right, we call that a rent to own. Now that's what you were talking about before, which, by the way, rent to own and lease option is the same thing, just two different ways of saying it. Right? That's like saying car and automobile. It's the same thing.
Sure.
Okay.
Car sounds a little more easy.
Right. So it's a rent to own and lease option.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's very simple. what's the main factor of you staying in the deal and not staying in the deal? And you spotted it out a little bit earlier. Yeah. If you have about 15% of equity, not off the 110% number, off of the comp number, the real number.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So about 15% worth of equity, okay? Or in other words, 85% of loan-to-value ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So how you do that is if you think you can sell for 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take, and you owe 85.
Mm-hmm.
You put 85,000 in your calculator, hit the divide button, put $100,000 in there, and hit the equals button, and it should say 85%.
Sure.
It should say 0.85.
Right.
Okay?
That's nice even numbers, but on the weird numbers, it should work out the same way.
So you want to have about 85%. Now, is this a steadfast number? No, it's a rule of thumb.
Mm.
I've done it with 90. I've done it with 70. It's a rule of thumb when you're negotiating. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to have about 15% worth of equity to stay in the deal. Okay? And I'm going to give you an example, a live example of this in a minute. And you want to have about 25% cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's not a steadfast number. So I just did a subject to deal where I picked up the $7,000 last night, which, by the way, they still owe me $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the house was worth $180. I paid $191.
Mm.
Why did I do that?
Because you like overpaying.
So I actually did it on a subject to deal.
Yeah.
Right, where I got the deed. We're going to talk about that next week. But the math was not what I'm talking about here. The reason why is because my payment is $993 a month, and I rent it for $1,750. So I got $750 a month, $750 plus a month positive cash flow.
Wow, that's more than 25%.
That's more than 25%. So I play with those numbers. I'm just giving you rules of thumb. I mean, in this particular case, it cost me nothing to get in the property. Mm-hmm. It was a lay-down deal, which means it was extremely simple. Mm-hmm. I looked at the house. Literally 3 days later, went back. We had a notary public meet us at the house. He signed all the documents, and he walked away.
Yep.
Okay. I had somebody come in for $400 and clean the house, and that's all I did.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And my seller is giving me $12,000, $7,000 to move in. They have some lawsuit. The buyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my buyer is moving in. They gave me $7,000 plus $1,750 for the first month's rent,
mm-hmm.
and then I gave her 90 days because they have some lawsuit or something going on that is coming to fruition, and she's going to give me another $5,000.
Okay.
And she told me last night, oh, by the way, that lawsuit I told you about, everything's all set. All we could do is sign paperwork. I'll probably have that money in a couple weeks.
Awesome.
So I got $12,000.
It's funny. People just come up with things. I know you asked, well, I don't have all the money. Do you have something else? Do you have jewelry, a RV, extra car to sell? I mean, whatever they have. People have things sometimes.
The only thing I want to say here is normally the only expense I would have is if you do the deed correct, which we're going to talk about next week with episode 192 is going to be on subject twos.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I had to do here is normally I pay about $70 to file the deed,
mm-hmm.
but there was some lien restrictions that I had to take care of from the past, so I made the seller go pay $100 for lien releases that were, so that I could make sure I had them, and I want to make sure they were filed correctly, so I waited 3 weeks for him to get the lien releases.
Okay, so they were already done, but the paperwork hadn't been correctly done?
They didn't file it on the deed, so I got the original documents from the attorneys that did the work,
right.
and then a couple days ago I went there and it cost me $250 to file all these liens, but now I know it's done correctly. I put them in the right sequence, so that when I go to sell with the bank later, I don't have to worry about all this yucky, dirty stuff being done incorrectly.
Yeah, because the deed is clean then.
And it cost me $250. Now let me ask you this question, Peter. Would you pay me $250 to get $12,000?
Oh, hell
and
no.
$750 a month?
Hell no.
I didn't think you would. All right, so in this transaction that we're talking about, the rent to own or the lease option,
mm-hmm.
right? In this transaction, you don't assign the option, which means that your seller and buyer don't know what the other's doing.
Right.
So we're going to sign a option with a lease with our seller between
mm-hmm.
the seller and us,
mm-hmm.
or me,
mm-hmm.
and then I'm going to sign a separate document, lease and an option with my buyer.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why is because we're not going to transfer the documents from one to the other. Because realize when we do a transfer, when we do a slot deal, the option agreement that we sign with the seller, we're transferring it to the buyer. So that means the buyer sees everything.
Right. All
they
the
know
numbers,
how much we
all
paid,
the agreements.
everything's there. It's all transparent. Right.
And all the numbers are pretty much the same, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there's nothing to. There's
and
no
you tell
discrepancies.
him up front how you made your money. Everybody wants to know how you make your money. You tell them, and they're okay with that. As long as you're not being a hog, because hogs get slaughtered, pigs get fat, right? So as long as you're not being a hog and charging too much money, you'll get away with it.
Yeah.
Okay. More importantly, in this deal, we aren't going to do that because I'm gonna sign on. So in our $190,000 deal that we were using as an example with the slot, right? So 85% or 15% equity of that is $161. And 75% of the payment, which leaves us 25% cash flow is $1125. So if I sign this deal at $161 and I'm paying $1125, right? Now this deal that I just did, I could do that. I could have done that with this guy because he's only paying $993 a month, right? So he could take $1125 a month
and be making something,
right? So I'm not saying, so they're out there.
Yeah.
And he couldn't take the 161 though. That was the problem. That's why I did what I did.
So did he owe the 191?
Yeah, I got the mortgage statement. I sent them to you. You had the mortgage statement. So anyways, in this particular case, we don't want our buyer to see that we paid 161 and we only have to pay $1125 a month. Because we're going to sell to the buyer, in this particular case, maybe $210,000, $2,099. Right?
Yep.
Because we can get a premium for the house, because the house is worth $200, right, or $190. We can get a premium price. We could get 10% more when we sell it. So we're going to sell for, we'll say, $2,099. We don't want the buyer to see we only paid 161. Right? We don't want the buyer to realize that we're paying $1125 a month and they're paying $1,700.
Yep.
So they're two separate agreements. So you write one master lease and one master option with your seller that's going to be for your 5 or 10 years, and then you're going to write a sublease with your buyer that will probably be for 2 years for the more amount of money. Okay?
Yep.
And you don't want them to cross paths.
Right.
Right? That's why you write separate agreements. And then again,
but that $1,750 is fair market or just for the rental.
Well, if they went and got a mortgage for $200,000 and paid the taxes and insurance, it would be damn clear. And I take that number. That's how I come up with my number. So many people come to me. I hate it. I get aggravated. I blow up because it's like, what's the rental? And I'm like, they go on to Rentometer. They go all these. You go to Zillow, Value Tools, and they're like, no, it's not a rental. Take the $209,000 that you're selling a house for. You go put it in a simple calculator for 4% or 3% money times 30 years, and add your taxes and insurance. There's your payment. I add $200. Why do I add $200 to the rent? Because why would a tenant buyer, if I'm charging $1,500 more for a rent, and their mortgage is going to be $1,600, why are they motivated to go get a mortgage? If I'm charging $1,800 and they can get a mortgage for $1,600, are they going to be motivated?
Sure.
There you go. That's what I do.
Yeah, I also look at the other way. Like when you rent something from somebody, he's not breaking even. He's got to charge a couple of more to make some money. Why be in business to break even?
Well, plus you're going to work every month. I mean, I just did my monthly stuff. I mean, it takes me between 5 and 7 hours to handle all my rents because I do it all myself. I got to collect all the money. I have to put all the deposits together. Then the next day I got to write all the checks, and some of them have special, agreements. So I'm not going to want to do that for free.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Now, does that make sense? So that would be a rent to own.
Sure.
So you're going to stay in for 15%. You're going to make, which by the way is the best deal. That deal, and the subject to deal I'm going to talk to next week. If you understood those two concepts, you could make a damn good living. Okay? You have to figure out how to deal hunt for them, which is I'm going to talk about in a minute, but that's not as hard as you think these days, not with the internet.
Yeah, I was thinking before, people just want something they can do on the internet. Oh, we do this on the internet.
Yeah, totally. Now, before we run off, there's one more thing I want to talk about. Okay, because we talked about the slot deal and we talked about the rent-to-own, which is deal number 1 and deal number 3, right? You can use an option without a lease.
Oh, yeah.
Right? In other words, if the seller doesn't want to give you 2 years to pay them, right? Like suppose the 161, they're willing to do the 161, but they don't want to give you the 2 years. Well, you can sign an option agreement for 90 days. Now, when you use an option all by itself, do it with a bit of caution. Okay? Because this puts you in the same pond as the realtor.
Right, because you're going to sell the property.
Because you're going to go try to find someone that's qualified for a mortgage and all that kind of stuff, right? So, when we sell on a lease option, technically we're selling the financing, not the house. When you're selling like a realtor, the realtor is selling the house.
Right. Look how pretty.
Right. So,
nice hair.
So everything has to be up to snuff before the bank will lend money on it, because they want to make sure they have recourse on a tangible asset or a tangible collateral. They want to make sure their collateral is tangible and it's not some rundown piece of shit that they can't foreclose on.
Right.
Not to mention, the bank does a very good job of sucking all the money out of the buyer for the closing. So they want to make sure, I learned this when I was in the car business. We had a buy here, pay here business.
Yeah.
Which means we had 50 cars in a lot. Somebody would come in, they would give you a down payment, and they would make the payments to us. They would come back every week and make payments to us. It didn't take me long to figure out every time that person came in and made that payment, they had a complaint about the car. It's making a little squeak. Can you look? It's got a bad belt. Can you put one on there? And they were like, they thought that they were like, so what I did...
They're renting the damn car?
Yeah, pretty much. So what I did is this is a long time ago. This is before today. You got to realize this is like 25 years ago, maybe more, 30 years ago. Probably 30 years ago. Yeah, probably 30 years
That's
ago.
BT.
So this is like...
Before tech.
Yeah, totally. So this is before all the internet and all that stuff, right? Cell phones, this is before all that, right?
Yeah.
So what I did is I went to the bank and made a deal with the bank, because what I realized is if I could suck the money out of their account, they didn't have to come in and complain to me, and all of a sudden my expenses went way down. So I transferred all of my loans from people coming in to pay for me, right? Pay to me.
Yeah.
To I just do a draft out of your account.
Right.
So on Wednesday, my wife at the time would do the drafts, and by Friday I would know who bounced and who didn't, and by Monday I was repoing. Nice little system.
Yeah, like automatic payments.
Yeah, right? So houses are the same way. This is how I learned some of this stuff, because I was doing it in the car business and I just transferred it over into the house business, right? So my point is that your seller knows they can't pay. I'm sorry. Yeah, your seller knows that your buyer can't pay. Cannot pay.
Oh, cannot. Oh.
Yeah, they can't go get a loan.
Oh, yeah.
That's why
Right now
they're getting a premium
they're not
price.
qualified right now. Yes.
Right? So the tangent that I'm on here is that a realtor doesn't offer that. What a realtor wants is they want to come in, they want to bring the money, and they want to get all the house. And when they suck the money out of the buyer to do the closing, it leaves them no money to do the repairs.
Oh.
Usually.
Yeah.
Like the house we just sold, they sucked all the money out of the buyer, and there's no money to do repairs.
Well, people just tend to buy as much as they possibly can.
Right.
They buy the car they can't afford. They have no money left.
Right.
Thank God it's new, but hopefully in 2 years they have money to fix it when it goes.
Exactly.
Oh, I can't fix it. I'm making payments still. Like, not smart.
So people who need to pay monthly will feel like they're getting a house they normally couldn't get, and will be less picky about the house, right? And where buyers that are qualified for mortgages are just the opposite. Okay, so with that in mind, realize you need to have an advantage over the house on just an option.
Right.
So usually that's, because it's going to be like selling the house on the MLS, because you're competing with all the other realtors and everything else.
Yeah.
So there has to be some uniqueness to the house that would attract people to come there. Because if you're selling a house for $200,000 and so is everyone else in that neighborhood in that area selling houses for $200,000, why would they come to you?
Sure.
Right? Unless there's something really unique about the house, like you're the only one with a built-in swimming pool, or it's got a 4-car garage, or it's got some business in it, or whatever. There's some uniqueness, then you could do that. Otherwise, what you need to do is you need to lower the price. Sometimes I'll do creative down payment stuff, right? Maybe down payment assistance, that kind of stuff. Just to get some excitement on there. But mostly we lower the price.
Right.
Right. So if everybody else is selling for $199.9, you come out at $189.9. Because you're only paying $161. Right.
Sure. So you have to buy low enough to add the.
Well, you have to have a hook to get people interested. Because if you don't, then our hook normally is you don't need bank qualifying. But if you do just an option, you lose that.
Right, because they have to get
that advantage.
But usually it takes about 15% to buy and sell a house, and if we get it for 10% equity, there's that kind of 5% buffer.
That's right.
So there's a little bit of leeway right there. If you can get it a little bit less than that, then you have 10% buffer, and then you got money. They can buy it. He can sell it. He's okay.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Wow, we covered a lot.
That's a lot of paper you had there.
And hopefully I pierced some of the fear out there and educated a few just to get out there and just do a deal.
Well, you do say it's simple, and it is. All the other stuff you're saying, I'm getting, is just to reassure people that nothing crazy, other things can happen. It's not too much that can happen.
Right.
Life is life, but there's not too much built-in crazy on this stuff.
Right.
If you just said, just do this, people would be sitting there, well, what if?
Right.
So your extra hour, it just gets rid of some of the, don't worry about the what if.
Well, it's my experiences of then things happening to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, good. So a couple things before we go. If you want to find these deals, because that's the biggest thing. How do you find sellers willing to do creative real estate deals that we're talking about? I run an internship where I spend 3 days a week with you, or 3 hours a week with you. What happens is we change the days of the week, but the first session, we'll say, is on a Monday. I kind of teach you the basic ideas that we have to make you understand that week, or have you understand that week. The second session, we'll say, like on a Wednesday, is when I actually do it in front of you on a screen share. We're all on a screen share. I actually do it in front of you and show you how to do this.
Yep.
And then on Friday, this is the third session, and the days change. On the third session, I actually make you do it in front of me so I can make sure you understand it.
Yeah, hence internship.
Right.
You want to be an electrician, you do it, and the guy watches. No, not that wire, bud.
Right. And we do that for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's not very expensive. It's less than my coaching. It's like the only reason why I can do it is because I can do it. So if you want to figure out how to find these creative people and actually do it, not some course where you go study by yourself, not something where you're going to have a bunch of homework. No, everything is done on the call. Everything's done while we're together. And when you leave, you actually have deals. You have people. The end of it, you actually have people texting you and saying, call me. I watch it in front of my own eyes. The guys that actually do step by step, like every week, they do their thing. They actually have leads. Matter of fact, the last internship I did, I'm still getting email questions. I just got one yesterday about seller said this and seller said that. How do I handle it? Okay, so it works.
Yeah.
So if you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/internship, you can see that. Also, because we're talking about lease options in this episode, if you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/free stuff, there's a document there, a 5-page document called Lease Option Explained. It's meant to give to your seller when you're making offers.
Right. He goes, how does this work? Can you send me something?
Right. It has all frequently asked questions on there. It's a great document for you to understand, but you can also get that, manipulate the last page that has my name and phone number on it, put your name and phone number on it, and you can send that off to your when you're making your offers so that they understand how a lease option works. So if you're talking to somebody and they're like, send me some information, this is the document you would send. So you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com/free stuff. That's there. Also on that same page, on free stuff, on the free stuff page, is a for sale by owner script, so that you can start calling for sale by owners and start seeing if you can find these deals. Okay. And then the last thing is, please leave me some reviews. If you go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, top right-hand corner, it says podcast. When you click on that page, there's a button there that says reviews. Go there, leave me a review, leave you a review, leave us a review. I absolutely live for those reviews because I love seeing them. And if you feel like there's something you want us to talk about, like Emma talked about a couple weeks ago, just send me a support ticket on some topic you want to hear about or some confusion you have, and we'll absolutely do an episode. Or I'll help you in if it's not something I can do a whole episode on, we'll help you with that.
Yep.
Okay. Next week, episode 192, we're going to talk about getting the deed. Now, we did an episode on that, but I'm going to do a little bit different episode because I'm going to go over the theory of it and how it works and then tie in some deal structuring with it and talk about that quite a bit. Okay? So we'll see you at episode 192.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.